What's going on, everybody? Tom here with Black Sheep Keto, and welcome to another free recipe video just for you subscribers out there. And if you're not a subscriber yet, please consider doing so. Now today we're going to be making a delicious keto yellow cupcake with a buttercream frosting. Now, a yellow cake versus a white cake, it just really comes down to egg yolks, but we want that yolk since there is a little bit more fat. And with this recipe, I've also tweaked it to make a chocolate cupcake and a red velvet cupcake. So if you guys want to see either one of those, I'm only going to do one more. Let me know down in the comment section which you prefer, or if there's any other recipe, whether it be a dessert or an entree, whatever you want, let me know down there as well. That way I kind of have some inspiration to gauge what you guys want to see me make. With that, let's go and get into today's recipe for these delicious keto yellow cupcakes with a buttercream frosting. Alright everybody, welcome to our recipe portion for these awesome keto yellow cupcakes with a buttercream frosting. Now in front of me you see all of the dry ingredients. We're going to break this down into the dry ingredients, wet ingredients, and then lastly the frosting, since these do have to cool down a little bit before you can frost them. It's a buttercream, buttermelt, you guys get the point. Anyway, let's get going here. So going into this large mixing bowl here, I have 1 cup or 112 grams of finely sifted almond flour. Then we have 1/4 cup or about 48 grams of Lakanto's monk fruit sweetener. It's a monk fruit and erythritol blend, and this is the granulated variety. Next up, we have 1 tablespoon or about 7 grams of coconut flour. This just helps with the texture and a bit of moisture control, if I'm being honest. Next up, 1/2 teaspoon of xanthan gum. And our last dry ingredient, 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder. That is baking powder, not baking soda. They are not interchangeable. And then all we really have to do is give this a quick whisking. Now set this aside for just a minute while we get our wet ingredients ready. Now for our wet ingredients, it's actually fairly simple. We have 3 whole large eggs. Now if this were a white cake, we wouldn't be using the yolks, but since it's a yellow cake, we add the yolks in. That gives us a little bit more fat and actually some flavor from the yolks. Then we have 2 tablespoons of heavy whipping cream, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Guys, get a good quality vanilla extract. That imitation stuff doesn't always have the same flavor as the real stuff. It's a little bit more expensive, but trust me, it is totally worth it. And lastly, we have 1/2 teaspoon of liquid stevia. This is the stuff from Sweet Drops, and I believe it's 24 times sweeter than sugar. The reason we're blending that with the Lakanto's monk fruit and erythritol blend is that erythritol, as it cools down, can form like a bit of a crusty layer on the outside of our cupcakes, and we don't like that. So we brought that down a bit and added some stevia to just kind of make up the sweetness a little bit. And go ahead and whisk this until it's well combined, all the eggs are beaten, all of that fun stuff. You'll know when to stop. Now that our wet and dry ingredients are both independently mixed together, go ahead and add your wet ingredients to the dry ingredients and then mix it until well combined. You don't want to really overmix it, just mix it enough to get it combined and then stop. You'll see what I do right now. And that's good enough. So this recipe will make 6 cupcakes, and as such, I have taken a cupcake pan and lined it with 6 cupcake liners. So we're gonna go ahead and spread this evenly through all 6 of these cupcake molds. So what I like to do is just tap them a few times to try to smooth out that top layer a little bit. Looks good enough to me. So these will go into a 350-degree Fahrenheit oven, that's about 175 degrees Celsius, for roughly 20 minutes. Then when you remove them, let them cool down entirely before you come back to this video here and watch how to make the frosting. So I'm gonna do that, get these in that 350-degree Fahrenheit oven, 20 minutes, let them cool probably 30 to 40 minutes, come back and make my frosting. And as a note, while these are baking, it's probably a good idea just to take 1 stick of butter, since we are making a buttercream frosting, and just leave it out so that it comes to room temperature. Now I'll catch up with you guys when these are cooled down and we're ready to frost them. So now that our timer has gone off, I went ahead and just stuck a toothpick into one of the cupcakes to make sure they were done. I know my oven, since I've been experimenting with this a lot, so I know 20 minutes is actually what I need, but yours could be a little bit more or a little bit less. But now that our cupcakes have come out of the oven and are fully cooled, let me just say that one more time, fully cooled, because there's always somebody who's going to try this when it's warm and it's going to do a massive mess. And I really don't advise putting them in the refrigerator, as it can kind of dry them out as they're cooling down. In any case, it is now time to make our frosting. So we have all the ingredients for our buttercream sitting right in front of me here, and it's really quite simple to make. First things first, we have 1 stick of butter that is at room temperature. And if you need to, microwave it or whatever to make it a little bit softer, that's fine. You just don't want to melt it. Next up, we have 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract and 2 tablespoons of heavy whipping cream. And I'm going to go ahead and get this all mixed together before we move on to the sweetener. Now this would be a great time to use like an electric hand mixer if you have it. I'm not going to do that because they're quite loud on camera and it wouldn't be great for your ears. But now that we have our vanilla, butter, and cream for our buttercream in this bowl, it's time to add our sweetener. So for our sweetener, I have 1/2 cup or 72 grams of a powdered / confectioner's erythritol monk fruit blend. It's almost the same thing as the granular one that we used in the cake itself, but this is powdered and it actually makes it quite a bit sweeter than sugar. Now there are a couple companies who make it. One is Lecanto and one is Anthony's. I'm using the Anthony's one because it's cheaper and easier for me to get, but the Lecanto one will work just fine. You just need a confectioner's erythritol monk fruit sweetener. So now I'll go ahead and add this right into our vanilla, butter, and cream. And that's really all there is to the frosting. Just keep mixing that until you beat out any clumps that there may be. That powdered erythritol tends to clump just a little bit, so just beat that out until it's smooth. And you can actually use this frosting as is. But since I want these photos to look really pretty, we're gonna go ahead and add a little bit of food coloring. I'm gonna be using the Black Sheep Keto Green. Okay, it's just a green food coloring. Now, a note on food coloring is a lot of it is going to have sugars in it. Now, if you go to Sprouts or if you have a Sprouts Market near you, I've been able to find some that is sugar-free. But the grand scheme of things, just my personal opinion, a few drops of food coloring that has a bit of sugar in it spread over 6 cupcakes when you consider the amount you're using is kind of insignificant. I know everybody has their own dietary needs and restrictions, but for me, even if I can't make it down to Sprouts to get the sugar-free ones, it's not enough that I'm actually that worried about it, but to each their own. So we'll go ahead and mix in that food coloring, and then I'll show you how to get into a piping bag. So to decorate our cupcakes, I recommend using a piping bag, or typically what I actually do is take a 1-gallon Ziploc bag and just cut a corner off. But I was digging through my cabinets, I found a piping bag, so I am gonna use that today. And I'm just using the wide open, kind of largest cylindrical tip that I have. I'm not looking for anything pretty here. Just wanna get the frosting on the cupcakes as neatly as possible. So I'm gonna go ahead and transfer all of that frosting into this piping bag, get the cupcakes all decorated and looking pretty. I'll put a finished product picture on the screen right now, and then I'm gonna catch up with you all for the taste test. So now that you guys have seen the recipe and the finished product, it is time for the taste test. Now I do have all of my cupcakes right here. Please don't make fun of me too much, guys. I'm not a baker, I'm not a pastry artist, I'm a software engineer. I did the best I could. Some pastry artist out there is probably just laughing hysterically at how horrible these are, but you know what? They're homemade and you can tell they're homemade. In any case, I actually didn't end up using all of the frosting. There's a little bit left here in the piping bag that I'll figure out something to do with. But it is a very good buttercream. Not too sweet, but just sweet enough. In any case, let me grab one of these cupcakes here and let's give it a bite for our taste test. As you guys can see, the paper peels back nicely, and cheers. Now these cupcakes did take a lot of work and I am so proud of the way they turned out. You guys can see this, they're nice and light, airy, soft. They're sweet, but not overly sweet. Sometimes when I eat cupcakes, they're just sickly sweet, and I can't do that after being on keto for 6 years now. So feel free to mess with the sweeteners a little bit, but I think for the majority of people out there, the sweetness that I have this is just about perfect. Now in terms of storing these things, I recommend an airtight container inside your refrigerator. The airtight container is going to stop the frosting and the cake from getting that kind of really crispy, crusty exterior. Not great in my opinion, but just be warned that the frosting will firm up a little bit in the refrigerator. It's totally fine, you'll still be able to bite right through it. Just want to let you guys know that it's not going to be quite as soft as what you're seeing here if you've let it sit in the refrigerator overnight. And I think that's going to do it for this video. Now, as always, the full written recipe, there'll be a link to that in the description, the macros and all that'll be right down there as well. If you guys have any questions, comments, anything like that for me, leave them down in the comment section. Make sure you like this video and subscribe if you want to. With that, I will see you all in the next one.